Okay. Right. Let's just, for the sake of new people, just talk a moment about complementary colours, what they actually are. We know that all colour is an expression of a particular wavelength, and it's the wavelength which is reflected from the object that we actually see. All others are absorbed. So we know that in nature there are three prime colours, red, green and blue. And if we put these in a circle, because each one makes up roughly a third of the spectrum. So when it comes to the red part, this is red and orange. So red and orange together make up a third of the total spectrum over here. With the green, we add green and yellow go together, and that makes the second third. And then blue, indigo and violet make up the third third. Okay? Now, let's take an easy example. If we remove red from the spectrum here, we're left with green and blue. All right, is everybody happy with that? Okay. And if you remove, if you add green and blue together, you get turquoise, okay, or otherwise known as cyan when you use print color. So cyan is therefore the complementary color to red. Okay. So in other words, if you put the cyan color on, you absorb the red end of the spectrum. Okay, so this is why it's a good colour for a red person to wear. Okay, so let's do the same with green. If we remove the green, we're left with red and blue. And when you mix red and blue together, you get purple, or magenta as it's called. Okay, so magenta is the complementary colour to green. If you do the same with blue, and you take blue out of the spectrum, you mix with red and green, you end up with yellow. So yellow is the complementary colour to blue. Okay, so these are primary colours and complementary. Now, the problem is that the human cone, as I expressed earlier, doesn't pick up mid-range red, green and blue, it's offset. So the blue, remember, is slightly further around the spectrum into the violet end. So this means that the complementary colour to the blue, violet, is actually a yellowy green colour. Okay, it's more in the green end because it's all moved round slightly. Imagine a cycle wheel. So the opposite end of the cycle wheel is, if we tilt the cycle wheel round a little bit, you're going to get it on the opposite side. So it's more of a yellowy green colour. In fact, it's only 5 nanometers different from the green acetate to begin with, the green cone colour. The complementary colour to the green is in the violet end of the spectrum. And the complementary colour to red, as we said, is the turquoise or cyan. So this is why in your packets you've got 3 colours which are complementary. Okay? So don't get these muddled up with the other ones. So you've got epigenetics, it says complement to the green cone, and then you've got complement to the blue cone and complement to the red cone. So these are your good colours. So whatever colours it is you truly weaken to, the complementary colours are your good colours or therapeutic ones. So those are the ones that you go and put on when you go out inside into the sun. Don't look at the sun, but just be in the bright light. And this will boost your energy up better than anything else. So when you're working with a patient, you can work from weakness with the weakening colours, or you can work from strength with the complementary colours. Okay? And if you put those around the umbilicus, if you're splitting them, if you've got somebody who's got 2 cone colours, you just put the paper clip between them very conveniently and, like a pair of legs, bring them apart. Okay? And then put them around the umbilical area. That leaves the umbilicus free to put various pills and potions in and testings to use as a marker. Right? And you'll be amazed how much weaker the muscle response is around the umbilicus with this than even over the eyes. Okay? But start with the eyes with the patient because you need to convince the patient of what you're doing. Okay? And then they're with you. Then get them to shut the eyes and then say, look, it's remarkable, isn't it? Because there's receptors in the skin, and then you can place it there, and then you're home and dry. The patient won't query what you're doing. Okay, so that's what a complementary colour. Is everybody happy with what a complementary colour is? Okay, so we'll be working through the day. If I want to work from strength, I use the complementary colour. If I want to work from weakness, then I simply use the cone colours. Okay, it's as simple as that. You don't need anything more complex than just, the colours. So that's what we've said. So Now, how do we go about looking at a person? This is always a big question. How do I examine a patient? And there's various ways of getting into a person as far as their problem is concerned. But today we want to concentrate on the hormones. Maybe the patients come to see you because they've got clearly hormonal problems. Maybe menstrual problems, hot flushes, whatever it might be, premenstrual tension. Maybe they've got immune system problems. Maybe they've got weight gain, etc. All it matters is how do we get into the system to begin with, all right? So today we're going to be concentrating on more the hormonal connection, and you'll see that when you do the hormones, you're actually looking at every single cell in the body, because every single cell in the body has receptors for these hormones, okay? So in other words, the body is holographic. If you know how to do this, you can do it through the energy pathways, because everything relates to energy. So you could use your ATP markers, etc. In June, we're going to be doing it through the acupuncture meridians and the neurotransmitters. And that's more applicable for people with emotional, psychiatric problems to look at real serious problems of depression, etc., by using the neurotransmitters. But today we're going to use the more fluidy brain, in other words, the hormonal system, and concentrate on that. Because this will help you to answer why people have various shapes and sizes and various ailments. So you place the weakening acetate across the eyes, or preferably the umbilical area. Okay, we've all done that, or we know what our weakening colour is. Don't 100% agree with what's shown in the room here, all right? Remember, make sure you do it in the daylight to get a real product. Challenge the tissue extracts of the associated glands for strengthening. This is what I did with Paul. Paul weakened to the blue, so I put the gonads on, in his case the testes, and then he also weakened to the red, so we knew that there was a thyroid involvement here, so we put some thyroid tissue extract on, okay? That's not the hormones, that's the tissue extract, just to verify. Now, it is possible that he may have other glands involved as well. And if you've got a pain diagnostic kit 1, it has all the common hormonal glands in there. And what we found and observed is that people who have sleep patterns and electromagnetic patterns problems will usually strengthen to the pineal tissue extract. Okay, so if you've got pain diagnostic box 1, you can go through other glands. And we found that other glands can be affected in people in addition to their primary coordinating glands of their colours. Okay? So you can't say exclusively Paul doesn't have any other glandular response. We know for sure that his gonads and his thyroid are involved. That's 100% with everybody who has a colour that weakens. But he could have a sleep problem. Okay? Do you have a sleep problem? No. Okay, but some people do have sleep problems. And we know very often sleep problems are associated with electromagnetic fields, okay, affecting the pineal and the production of melatonin. So if you've got people who are highly sensitive, and I've had 2 people just recently, which I haven't actually physically seen because they can't leave the house. One of them is in Paris, and he's very electromagnetic sensitive. He doesn't use a computer, he can't email, but he talks to me on the phone. And the other patient is somebody who talks on the phone with a loudspeaker because they're so sensitive to the phone. So these people are unable to go anywhere near electronic equipment, certainly not mobile phones or anything like this. And they both show very positive to the pineal gland. And the pineal gland, in many people, can become calcified. It has a strong affinity to calcium. And what happens is calcium deposits, in other words, apoptosis occurs in the tissue structure of the pineal, and they're unable to regenerate enough to be able to produce enough melatonin, so they get sleep problems and big electromagnetic disturbances. And the thing that causes this more than anything else is toxic metals. Okay, build-up of toxic metals. Even iron, which is highly magnetic, as we know. So if you've got a patient or yourself, sleep problems, very, very sensitive to electromagnetic fields, very, very sensitive, this is a sure indication of toxic metal build-up. Those waves just go like magnets straight into the toxic metal. And if those toxic metals are in the brain, it homes straight into them. It lights them up. Okay? So always with electromagnetic, check the person for toxic metals. Okay? And which toxic metals? I've told you. The reds are aluminium, the greens are nickel, and the blues are mercury. Those are the key ones. It doesn't mean there's not other ones, but at least you've got some really good leads then. Okay? Now, there could be other glands affected. We can't say that Paul doesn't have adrenal problems. He could have those secondary. Okay? Sometimes we find we've got a person who's got gonadal, they're a blue-blue, but they get a thyroid problem as well. But you'll find that they don't weaken to the red, and these are people whose thyroid is secondary to the gonads. Always work with the primary gland, because you'll find that these people sometimes end up on thyroxine or iodine. And they don't need it. It can be toxic for them because the thyroid is simply trying to cope for the problems within the gonads. Okay, one is playing off the other. Always go for the prime colour and the prime gland. That's where the answer to the problem is. So challenge with the tissue extract. You might find pancreas affected. I've found some people pre-diabetic type 1s. If you find a person strengthens to pancreatic tissue when you do this challenge, warn them that their pancreas could be in real severe trouble if they don't pull themselves together and stop using the toiletries and the cosmetics and get their sugar handling under control. Because these people can suddenly go almost overnight into type 1 diabetes. Okay? So we pick those up, and anybody who's got type 1 diabetes, you'll find they strengthen to pancreatic tissue extract, okay? Using the colours there. If they've got immune system problems, it might be the spleen that shows up or the thymus. So it can be a number of glands. We found in some people the kidney shows. The kidney produces hormones like renin and so on. And it could be the liver, of course. The liver produces a lot of hormones. It could even be the stomach. Secretin and gastrin are local hormones that work there. And we've even found the eyes. There's hardly an ailment that doesn't afflict the human body that doesn't affect the eyes in some way. So the eyes are actually secreting, as well as vision cameras, they actually work as a secreting gland as well. So what we did is we put all the secreting glands together, and we called that a hormone disruptor. Now, it's a bad name, but we called it a hormone disruptor. What it should be called is a hormone composite, okay? Because it's a composite of all the hormones. And so it's a general screener that the hormones are affected. But why we called it a hormone disruptor is because we want to find out when something weakens a person, does it affect their hormones? And the answer is yes, every single time, because the hormones are the thing that regulates the whole of the body's metabolism. Okay? So every time that person has cheese and they weaken to the cheese, you put the hormone disruptor on. Okay? So if Paul weakened to cheese, okay, we can put the hormone disruptor and he would strengthen to the hormone disruptor. Okay? Or we could put his gonads on. No, the gonads, not his gonads. He could touch his gonads, or you can use the gonads in the test kits. Okay? And you will find 100% his gonads will be affected every time he eats cheese. Okay? So it's an interesting way because you can tie in then that his thyroid doesn't get affected when he eats cheese, but his gonads do. Okay? So every time he uses a particular toothpaste, you test the toothpaste and he weakens to it, how fascinating. Does it affect his thyroid or does it affect his gonads? You can play this little game with them. And what we found, it is frightening, absolutely frightening, with what people put on their bodies, what weakens them, and what it weakens. Okay? And in men and women. Okay? And we have to remember that most toiletries and cosmetics are estrogen mimickers. And the average woman puts 5.5 kilograms on their face every year, which is a lot. And trying to persuade them to test those because they could be causing a problem is very difficult. So we've got to have good, firm evidence that they've got a toxicity problem. Okay? And once you can link that into the estrogen receptor, then you're away. And then they will listen to you. And then if they're wearing that foundation and it's weakening them and it's cross-checking to their ovaries, then they're going to listen to you. And you've got to really be firm with them then. Because there's no, well, I only wear that occasionally. Well, they don't. They wear it all the time. They're just telling you that so they can continue. They are doing themselves untold damage by increasing the receptors' activity of the estrogens every time they wear a cosmetic or makeup. That weakens them. Okay? The ones that don't, that's fine. That's no problem at all. Okay, so challenge the tissue extract of the associated glands for strengthening. So you can use the one associated with the colour, or you can use the hormone disruptor. And that tells you that, yes, it affects the hormones, but it doesn't tell you which one. Okay, so we just use the hormone disruptor as a general marker, knowing that it affects hormones overall. Challenge with the active hormones for strengthening in order for their synthesis. Okay, so in Paul's case, we've now got a situation where we've got active hormones being affected. Okay, so let's bring Paul back on. Okay, now I'm going to just demonstrate this with Paul first of all, because this is really the key to it, and then the rest of the time we'll be explaining about the individual pathways. So what we want to do is we're going to work now with the weakening colours. All right. Now, I strongly suggest that you work around the umbilicus here. Get plenty of skin up. Yeah? Put that leg down. Okay. Now, you will find, if you go just a little bit ahead in this slide in the manual, you should find a chart. So some of you have got this chart. It's a chart of the hormones, how they're synthesized. These charts are available, this one here, as a laminate. You can download these free of charge off our website, but they don't come down the internet with a laminate. Okay? So some of these are available, but you can download them and get them laminated yourself, but you might as well buy one over there. They're great. You know, they're great for putting your tea and coffee on also. And they make fabulous table mats around when you're having a dinner party. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is the steroid side. Now, it's going to be probably quite difficult for you to read, but I'm going to go through it in detail, don't worry, on the screen there. So, steroid hormones, remember, are the same for the gonads as for the adrenal cortex. So once you've learned what they are, it's easy from then on. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to challenge from weakness to see what strengthens. This will show us what his deficiency is. Okay? Now, we don't want an intermediate substance. We want what is a hormone, which one is it that works with him. And which one will work with him will be one which has a receptor site. So what makes an active hormone is it's got a receptor site, okay, which has been identified. In other words, it's got a lock where the key, which is the hormone or the ligand, will bind into. And we'll talk about receptor sites, what they actually do, a little later. So let's have a look. So the first one of this family is progesterone. So what we're going to do is put him on progesterone. So we'll test him with the vial of progesterone. Now, surprisingly, people say, well, he's a man. And surprisingly, men need progesterone as much as women. And progesterone has many, many functions. Nothing to do with the gonadal side on fertilization, okay, but because men have progesterone and women have progesterone in the first 14 days of the cycle. Okay? Then it gets higher because the ovulated egg releases progesterone. That progesterone we're not interested in at the moment. We're interested in the base level of progesterone, which is being produced by the ovaries and the adrenal cortex. Okay? So let's see if he strengthens to that. Pull. And he doesn't. There's no strengthening to progesterone, so we move on. Now we'll learn, as we move on, the next biologically active hormone on the left-hand side of the chart is going to be aldosterone. Now, aldosterone is what is called a mineralocorticoid. And a mineralocorticoid is something involved with minerals, hence its name. Okay? And the mineral which is most studied here is sodium. So they talk about mineralocorticoid regulating sodium levels in the body and the amount that we excrete of sodium. But the $100 question really here is, why is it called a mineralocorticoid? Okay? Because it controls minerals. Okay? In addition to sodium, as though the sodium is the one that's looked at, it regulates calcium and magnesium and other minerals in the body. This completely threw me when I started getting patients with bone density problems. What was the cause of osteoporosis and osteopenia with people? We've heard all about estrogens. We know that estrogens or estrogens hold on to old bone. Okay? We know that 10 years after starting hormone replacement therapy, the bones are as brittle as what they would have been because you hold on to old bone and don't stimulate new bone. So what stimulates new bone is the androgens. So there was a great interest in DHEA then, and even testosterone. Testosterone put facial hair on women, so that wasn't very popular, but DHEA didn't and went on to make testosterone. So that was very popular for a while. And then along came natural progesterone, which is a mild androgen, which increases certain other ones. But the reason the progesterone works is a hormone which surprised me totally, and I found consistently with every case of osteoporosis, is low aldosterone. Okay? They're spilling their minerals into their urine. They're peeing their bones away. Okay? And you will never control that by taking supplements of calcium, etc., because you just continue to pass them out until you can regulate the aldosterone pathway. So you will find 100% of people with bone density problems have got low aldosterone. And you stimulate the aldosterone in some people by increasing the substrate sufficiently that you end up making more aldosterone, which is why progesterone works. It's nothing to do with progesterone. It's to do with the fact you actually stimulate aldosterone, and then they hold on to their minerals. Then they can rebuild. So these people are short of minerals, but they're peeing them out because their aldosterone levels are suboptimal. So aldosterone is the next one. Now, you'll soon find out that red people do not get osteoporosis. Why? Because they're pretty solid in their adrenals and their gonads. Okay? But unfortunately for Paul, he's a gonad. So he could. So don't have your tubes taken out. Paul? So he doesn't strengthen to aldosterone. Okay, this is why many women, don't laugh, many women get osteoporosis when they have their ovaries removed. Okay, they have a hysterectomy, have a total hysterectomy. Not many people know that the uterus itself is a secreting gland. One of the things the uterus makes is vitamin D, which is really, really important for holding on to optimizing blood calcium levels. And if you have your uterus removed, you then don't get that extra supply of vitamin D, and you get blood calcium problems. So never have anything removed unless you've really got to. You know, sometimes there's a need, but on the other hand, it's better not to. It's all there for a reason. Okay, so that was aldosterone, and he passed that test. Now we move on to the second column of the steroid hormones is cortisol. Cortisol, as we'll see, is far, far more than just an increaser of blood glucose for gluconeogenesis. That's what the books tell you is all about. It has profound anti-inflammatory effects. We all know that because if you have cortisone for an inflammatory condition, it's the drug of choice. If you've got an inflammation like rheumatoid arthritis, polymyalgia, etc., the answer is cortisone. Brings instant relief almost to these people. But it also has side effects, doesn't it? It increases the osteoporosis because it's a catabolic steroid. It breaks bone and other tissue and other proteins down. So we want to try and get that person's cortisol optimal without the use of cortisol. But this is why cortisol works, because it has profound anti-inflammatory effects. But it also has profound immune system. So as a result, if you have high cortisol, you suppress your immune system. This is why they give cortisol to people who are having transplants, because they want to decrease and suppress the immune system. So often people pick up infections much more readily when the cortisol is high. But when the cortisol is low, they get inflammation. Okay? This is your patient who's got pain. And they got pain in all their muscles, pain in here, and for no reason. They don't understand why they got the pain. They can't relate it to trauma. This is your polymyalgias. Okay? Polymyalgia is sort of chronic fatigue syndrome, which we'll see a little bit later what that is, with pain. Okay, so they've got a double whammy. Okay, they've got the pain as well. And in the majority of these people, the pain is caused by one thing. The pain in these people, more often than anything else, is due to high lactic acid. High lactic acid. One of the different forms of lactic acid, there's three forms, there's a D, an L, and a DL lactic acid. People with chronic pains, chronic inflammation, will have high lactic acid in most of the cases. It's the lactic acid that's giving them the pain. They're as if they run 100 yards, 100 meters without leaving their bed. You know, they've got the build-up of lactic acid. They just can't do anything else. So lactic acid is produced, as we'll see, in the production of energy just before the Krebs cycle. So these people are tired because their Krebs cycles don't work, and they've got to build up of lactic acid. And that'll tell us specifically where the biochemical pathway is blocked between pyruvate and acetyl-CoA. So we'll come on to that when we look at the energy a little bit later on. So green people potentially are the ones who can get big problems with their adrenals, okay, and they can get chronic inflammation because of low cortisol. So let's see if Paul has this. So immediately you've done your colour challenge, you know which is the prime coordinating glands. Now you're just working through to find out which is the hormone which is affected. So we've got cortisol on him now, and he doesn't strengthen that, so that's irrelevant. Okay. Okay, now the next one we're going to do is DHEA. So DHEA is a mild androgen. Women have 90% of the same levels as males. There are receptors. They're located with the vitamin D receptor on cellular structure. Most often DHA is associated with as a precursor to testosterone, but DHA itself is an active hormone with shown receptor sites. So he doesn't strengthen to that. Now we test testosterone. The next biologically active hormone is testosterone. Pull, and that's where we see him strengthen quite nicely. Okay. So now we've got where he's weak. Okay. Now we know testosterone affects the sexual characteristics, but its main target is actually muscle tissue. Okay. Testosterone targets muscle tissue. That's why people who illegally take testosterone derivatives gain weight, and gain muscle bulk. Okay. And this is a fear as we get older, that if testosterone drops down, you actually lose muscle fiber. Okay, called sarcopenia. So you can actually lose muscle. And once you lost muscle, it's very difficult for older people to get it back together again. All right? So what we've got a situation here is a low testosterone. Okay? Now, low testosterone can lead to depression. Okay? Many sort of psychological problems can be associated with low levels of testosterone. Testosterone is made in both males and females, because females have testosterone as well, otherwise they wouldn't have any muscles. Okay? So what you've got is two precursors called androstenedione and androstenediol. And androstenedione and androstenediol are not biologically active hormones. There's no receptor sites being located for them. Okay? But they are precursors, in other words, or substrates to this particular enzyme. So we'll keep the testosterone to one side, and we'll challenge him with androstenedione and androstenediol. Okay, so what we do is from weakness, we'll see if he strengthens to either of these, which he doesn't to androstenedione. Pull, and he doesn't to androstenediol. So in other words, he's not strengthening to those, so the problem is between there and testosterone. So what I'm now going to do is take off his weakening colours and put on his strengthening colours, these nice good ones, and use those two hormones. So we've got androstenedione, which is strong too, and then androstenediol. Okay, so he weakens to androstenediol. Now, 80% of testosterone is in this pathway. 80% certainly in males, of the production of testosterone goes from androstenediol to testosterone and not androstenedione.
Well, could you slow down a little bit, please?
Okay, it's all become fine. It's all written down here for you, don't worry. Okay. So 80% in the male particularly is associated with androstenediol to testosterone. So when a male has low testosterone, look at that pathway. 80% of it is that pathway, not the androstenedione pathway so much.
Just repeat that one last time.
Yeah, you'll see it. I'm going to spend a lot of time on it, don't worry. Okay, now, there's one thing you need to think about with anything to do with that pathway with males and females. One thing you need to think about, and that is zinc. There's hardly a male that isn't deficient in zinc. Okay? And we'll see ways of testing this and different ways that the body can be short of zinc without you necessarily knowing it. But all the pathways involved with there are zinc dependent. So zinc is really, really important there. Obviously, essential fatty acids, magnesium, many other things as well, but always, really target in and see whether there's zinc involved here. Okay? And also if there's toxins. Is he using too much foundation? Okay. These are questions we've got to ask ourselves. He may not use foundation, not when he comes out on Saturdays during the day. Who knows what he does at night time? Okay. But he does use toothpaste every day. He does probably use his shampoo. He probably uses conditioner. He probably uses soap or body wash. Okay. He may use a deodorant. These are the common things. He may use shaving soap, shaving foam. Okay? These all contain hormone modulators, and you can't get away from it. They're well documented. Sodium lauryl sulfate in anything that foams, from your toothpaste to your shaving to your soap, is an estrogen mimicker. Okay? And that means it'll decrease his testosterone. So we need now, with Paul, to say, yes, you've got low testosterone. Let's see what nutrients you might need to build that up. Let's see what sort of things. But we've got to look at the toxins. We've got to look, how do we detoxify him? Okay? How do we get those toxins out? And what is the culprit? You know, do we change his soap? It may not be a problem at all with him, but we've got to look at it. Now, we also want to know, because he weakens to this, is this problem anything to do with his gonads? Okay? Or does it come from somewhere else? Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to cross-check this. So I'm going ahead for some work that we're going to be doing a bit later, to governor vessel 19. Okay, not governor vessel 20 at this particular time, governor vessel 19. And we'll see why that is in a minute. Paul? And the answer is yes. He negates the weakness from here. Okay? So what he's done is we've transferred his balls to his head. Okay? His problem down below is nothing to do with his balls. It's in here. Okay? So we now know that there's a link between what goes on in here and what goes on or doesn't go on down here. All right?
Are you meaning emotionally or?
I don't know yet. Next stage, okay? So we've got it back to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus is mostly regulated by the emotions, okay? So what we'll be looking at is the link. Yes, we can give him his herbs and his spices and his zinc and so on, but if we don't address the cause of the imbalance in the hypothalamus, where the problem is, he's just going to permanently need to take it. Okay? But if we can detect out what that is that's creating the imbalance potentially up here, we'll get this bit better settled. Okay? So in other words, I mean, most of us, we create our own hormone imbalances. Okay? And most of those hormone imbalances are secondary to our thinking process. But we'll get there a bit later on. So he may still need, if he's zinc deficient, he's still zinc deficient. Okay? You have to build that up. You have to treat, we have to get him off the toxins, that's for sure. But if we don't settle the regulator of the hormonal system, he'll just permanently maintain and need that particular nutrient. You know, last time when we did it at the seminar in October, we asked how many people in the room take nutrients. And practically everybody put their hand up. And the next question is, how many people, how do you feel if you don't take your nutrients? And half the people say, well, they don't feel any different, in which case they're wasting their time taking it, whether they take it or not. Some people find they feel worse when they don't take it. Okay, so in other words, it's having an effect. But it's only doing a holding job. Okay, they're continuing to have to take their nutrients all the time. And the question is, why is that? And some people, the answer to that is they're frightened to come off them. They use it as an insurance, which is fine also. But most of the reason is you're not getting to the cause of where the problem is. Okay, you're doing a holding job, which is like a natural pharmaceutical approach. If a person needs to continue to take, say, adenosylcobalamin for a B12, you know, week after week after week, and when you take them off the cobalamin, they go right down again, is you're not activating the B12, are you? They're not deficient in B12. They have a blood test and they say, oh, you know, the B12 level is sky high. You've got to stop. Are you taking B12 supplements? And the answer is they're not using it. They're not converting cobalamin into adenosylcobalamin. So you're doing a holding job, which is fine, but you're not really getting to the true cause of why that is. Okay, so we've got to find out what those active substances are that will activate the B12 into the adenosyl. So we know that there's things going on probably up here with you. Okay? No, it's all right. You can go back to that. Okay, so we'll be concentrating down here first of all and finding out what the problem is, why his steroid hormones, gonadal steroid hormones, are out of balance. So we know exactly where the problem is between androstenediol and testosterone. So we'll look in detail at that as we go along. So now, let me just swap glands. We know that the thyroid is also involved with him. And we know that the thyroid has two main active hormones, T4 and T3. I personally think T1 and T2 are also active hormones, but others say no, they're just precursors. So let's test him with thyroxine. This is otherwise known as T4. So we'll work from weakness again. Okay. Pull. And he doesn't strengthen to T4. Okay? So most people have a blood test done and say, T4 is fine. There's no problem with you, run away. But we know that T4, most T4, goes into the cell, crosses over the mitochondrial membrane, and has a particular function inside the mitochondria. Okay, that's where it really works. And in order to activate thyroxine, it has to lose one atom of iodine, or deiodinase. So T3, which is one atom of iodine less, is much more potent than T4. So T4 is like a carrier from the thyroid gland to the cells. But inside the cell, inside the mitochondria, the conversion is to T4, from T4 to T3. Now, the one thing T3 does, its real function within the cell, is to spin the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle. It determines the speed. This is what makes our metabolism. So if you spin nice and fast, you've got a good metabolism. If you don't spin so fast, okay, the speed of the turning is you slow down, and therefore you don't produce the ATP. Okay, so you're actually slowing down. Okay, some people are slowed down to almost a halt. Okay, so let's see what he happens to do to T3. Pull. So he strengthens really nicely to T3. So his thyroid involvement is the conversion, as we see, from T4 to T3. Okay? So if he's slowing down, his ATP is going to be less than optimal. Okay, so now we've got a double whammy, because we've got our low testosterone at one end, which is not putting up enough of the anabolic steroids into his system, but he's also slowing down because he's not got enough T3. Okay? Very difficult problem, you know, but there's a simple answer to it, as we'll see. But if he goes along to his GP and says, look, I feel tired, I'm a bit depressed, you know, you could be put on some mind-bending drugs and told to go and, you know, do something useful with your life. Okay. He's just retired, you know. This poor guy is just retired after 45 years in an office. And, you know, he's got depressed and he's losing, you know, his muscle strength. And he's in trouble, you know, he's gaining weight and so on. And these are things which are everyday problems that people come into GP surgeries. If you can hold questions, because there's no microphone. Okay. So we know he strengthens to T3. So what would he do with T4? We know that he doesn't strengthen to T4, but if I put T4 on him, because we make T3 from T4, what would he do to T4? He will weaken to it. So he weakens to T4 because he's got a relative high amount of T4 and not enough T3. Okay, so he weakens to thyroxine, okay, or T4. Okay, going from strength because we're looking for the precursor. Now let's do this on the board there, then everybody will understand. Okay, so can you make it back there now? Okay.